What is freedom? For most, it is the absence of walls, the ability to come and go. But for those who have known the sound of a steel door closing behind them, the definition becomes more complex. True freedom is not just about the body, but about the soul. It is the power to make a choice, especially when all the options are terrible. This is the story of a man who emerged from prison only to face his toughest sentence yet, and who discovered that true freedom sometimes feels like the cold concrete of a sidewalk. Miguel felt the air outside for the first time in 8 long years. The city air was an assault on his senses. It was thick with exhaust fumes and the smell of street food, so different from the sterile, repetitive air of the prison yard. The sounds were a cacophony of horns, distant sirens, and the murmur of hundreds of hurried conversations. He paused for a moment, feeling like an anachronism, a man in slow motion in a fast-paced world. His sentence for armed robbery, served to the last day, was finally over. He left with a handful of crumpled bills given to him by the state, an address for a shelter he already knew was overcrowded, and a past that followed him like a heavy shadow. His determination, however, was the only thing that seemed steely. Never to go back. Never again to be the man who had shamed his own name. The world that welcomed him, however, was not interested in his redemption. He tried. Dressed in the simple clothes he had been given, he knocked on doors. At a small diner, the smell of fried food almost made him faint from hunger. The manager, a middle-aged man in a stained apron, served him. Miguel was direct. "Sir, I'm looking for any kind of work. I wash dishes, I mop floors. I'm hardworking and I just need a chance." The manager seemed receptive, until Miguel, following the advice to be honest, handed over his papers. At that moment, Miguel saw the curtain of distrust descend over the man's eyes. The conversation changed. "I understand. Well, we don't have any openings at the moment, but we'll leave your contact information." The rejection was always polite, but the message was clear. To employers, his past was a stamp of unreliable. To landlords, it was a risk. The state money, which had seemed like a small fortune when he left, evaporated in a few days with cheap meals and bus tickets. The shelter was a microcosm of the prison. The same strict rules, the same distrust in the eyes, the same men broken by life. Miguel felt his hope fading, the promise of a new life becoming a cruel joke. The system had spat him out, but had given him no tools to survive. It was in this moment of absolute vulnerability that his past found him. Not in a police raid, but in the quiet luxury of a dark car that pulled up alongside him as he walked down a dimly lit street. The window rolled down, revealing the face of Jairo, his old boss in crime. A man who didn't look like he'd aged a day. He wore expensive clothes, a gold watch that gleamed in the dim light, and had the same predatory smile as ever. He wasn't there to collect debts. He was there to recruit. "Miguel," he said, his voice calm and dangerously familiar. "It's a tough world out here, I know. They throw you out on the street and expect you to do magic. But we take care of our own." The offer was direct, no holds barred. A place to live, a warm room, food on the table, money in the pocket, respect. In return, a small service. "A ride," Jairo said, gesturing with his hand. "Easy, fast. You're the best at this, Miguel. Always have been. It's your gift. Don't let them turn you into a beggar. Look at yourself. You belong with us." The temptation was a physical force. Miguel's stomach growled audibly. The chill of the approaching night already seemed to seep into his bones. Jairo's offer was not just for money. It was for a place in the world, for an identity that, for better or worse, he knew. To understand the power of Miguel's refusal, we need to look at the person who accepted. Tico was a young man who had been released from prison a month before him. We see Tico now. He is in an expensive restaurant, alone. He is wearing an uncomfortable-looking suit. The food on his plate, expensive and elaborate, is almost untouched. He looks at his cell phone on the table as if it were a bomb about to explode. And it does. The ringing is urgent. He answers it, and his posture changes instantly. He shrinks back, his voice a submissive whisper. "Yes, sir. Right away, sir. No problem. You can leave it." He hangs up. For a moment, he stares at his reflection in the window. The man staring back at him has haunted eyes. He has traded the concrete cell for a golden cage, but he is still a prisoner, chained to fear and Gyro's orders. Back in the alley, Miguel had one possession, his artifact of resistance. Inside the inside pocket of his worn jacket, wrapped in plastic to protect it from the sweat and rain, was a photograph. A faded, crumpled photograph of his daughter, Sophia, taken on her 5th birthday, shortly before he was arrested. In the photo, she was smiling, a wide, toothless smile, hugging a teddy bear nearly as big as she was. He remembered that day. The smell of the cake, her laughter that seemed to fill the universe. This is not just a piece of paper. It is Miguel's moral compass. Throughout his 8 years in prison, he looked at the photo not to remind himself of what he had lost, but to remind himself of why he needed to change. That smile was the image of the future he had sworn to himself he would no longer corrupt. That photo was the embodiment of his dignity. Miguel looked at the comfort of Gyro's car, and then at the darkness of the alley. He thought of Tico's haunted look, and the purity of Sophia's smile. He made his decision. "I appreciate the offer, Gyro. I really do. But my time with this life is over." Gyro's reaction was not anger. It was icy contempt. "Your choice, Miguel. But don't come crying to me when you're starving." The car window rolled up and he drove off, leaving Miguel alone, with an empty stomach and a heavy heart, but with a strange sense of lightness. He had faced his greatest temptation and overcome it. He chose hunger over the collar. If you believe dignity is worth more than comfort, comment dignity below. The next few weeks were a spiraling downward spiral. With no money and no options, he ended up on the streets. He learned the routines of the homeless, how to line up for a hot meal at a church, which awnings offered the best protection from the rain, how to keep warm on cold nights with newspapers. He was invisible in a new way. The same people who had once looked at him with fear for being an ex-convict now looked at him with indifference or contempt for being homeless. He faced hunger, cold, loneliness in its most absolute form. There were nights when Gyro's offer echoed in his mind like a siren. A roof over his head, a warm bed, food. It would be so easy. A phone call. On one particularly cold night, the rain fell relentlessly. Miguel huddled under the canopy of a closed store, the cardboard he lay on already soaked. He saw a father and daughter walking by, laughing under an umbrella. The scene hit him like a punch. He almost gave in. But then his trembling fingers reached for the warmth of his pocket, touching the outline of the photo. He took it out, shielding it from the rain. And in that girl's smile, he found the strength to endure another night. He resisted. His redemption didn't come in the form of a miracle job or a new house. It came in a much more subtle way. One day, sitting in a park, he saw a young man graffitiing the wall of a school. That young man was him 20 years earlier. The same anger, the same lack of direction. Miguel approached him. He didn't scold him. He just sat down next to him. "I've been there," he said, his voice hoarse from disuse. And he began to tell his story. He talked about prison, about regret, about Gyro, about Tico, about the photo in his pocket, about the choice he made every day when he woke up on the sidewalk. He didn't know if his words would have any effect, but as he shared his pain, he felt it lessen. He found a new purpose. He began attending community centers, talking to at-risk youth, not as a speaker but as one of them, as a living example of the two paths life offers. Miguel's story doesn't end with him leaving the street. The end of his story is about the definition of wealth and poverty. He slept on a cardboard box, but his soul was at peace. He ate whatever charity provided, but his character was unshakable. He had lost everything the world considered valuable, but he had gained the only thing that truly mattered: control over his own choices. And in that sense, the man who slept on the sidewalk, who clung to the memory of a child's smile, was the freest man in the city. From which city or country did you witness Miguel's journey?